there's two things that I wanted to take note to, because Pam has been such an influence to our lives as parents, and also just like the knowing that there's other people doing it, right? And that we kind of look crazy sometimes. Like people are like, that is not the way I would respond to that. Why aren't you reprimanding him, right?
Yes.
And I remember that a lot, especially when he was little, where he couldn't control his temperature, or his temp. What am I trying to say? Temper. I was like, wait, now I can't say it. His temper or his energy level or any of those things. And that it was conducive for the fact that he needed a timeout. He needed to be reprimanded. Or my daughter on the opposite end, who was like, why isn't she speaking up for herself? Why isn't she talking? Why isn't, like, she's not responding to me? I'm talking to her. Right. And it was just that she was shy, which I also don't like to speak out these like phraseologies over the kids, but call out their greatness. But to think through, without doing that, how we've allowed that life or that compassion or those components to them to really thrive and shine because we didn't reprimand them in the process. A quick example that is associated to all of these things is, even now as they've grown, my son, for instance, he'll get in the car right after school and he'll just vomit all the things that he did wrong that day. And it's the cutest thing, because you're like, oh, and like, of course, immediately you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't the teacher tell me about this? Or I don't know that that's the best thing that should be happening at school. Or you're thinking of all these stories.
Yes.
But instead we're just like, wow, thank you so much for being honest. How did that make you feel? How does it feel right now? And he's like, I've been holding it in my belly all day. Right. And so thinking through just that grace-filled space, I don't even have to reprimand him. He's done it to himself. Like when we do something wrong and we're carrying guilt, it's enough punishment half of the time, right?
Absolutely.
That if we can bring air to it, and we can then just extract what were you thinking? Why did you do that? What can we do next time? What would be a better way that we could respond? It gives them such grace and safety as a parent, rather than feeling like they have to flee, run, and hide, and then carry that to their deathbed. And I remember as an adult being like, so remember that one time, like, and sharing with my parents now what I was doing, feeling, experiencing as a child that I never felt like I had the opportunity to share, because I was going to get in trouble at that time, or that they were going to, continue to lecture me, or I was going to lose my phone, or any of those things. So I just wanted to bring life to the fact that there is another way to do it. And even as you were talking, I was thinking through the spelling test that we have every Friday. We practice every day the spelling words on the way to school, on the way home, a part of their homework. And when they get them all right, or they miss a couple, Gary always will get down at their level and be like, so how was it today? What did you get on your test? Did you get, your 12 out of 12, your 10 out of 10? And, they're super proud when they get them all right. He's like, that's awesome. Do I love you anymore because you got a 12 out of 12 is the question that he asks. And they always say no. They're like, no, you don't love me anymore because I'm smarter today. Do I love you any less because you missed one or two? And they go, no, you love me more. And because we say I love you more every minute, right? And it doesn't matter what your actions are. We just love you. And that's the father's role in that prodigal son versus the son who stayed home. And so encouraging parents to then, you get one wrong, you have a tough day, you make a wrong decision, you get called out by the teacher and you don't get the sticker for the day. What if that's the day that you take them to ice cream? What if that's the day that you cuddle up closer and you have a movie time that you don't usually do? Or that's the day that you celebrate just who they are? How that would change their perspective on choosing what's right versus wrong, or just choosing the grace way the next time. But knowing regardless, they're fully loved, that they can trust you, and it's not based on just behavior that you love them.
Yes, absolutely. So when we're talking about living in this freedom as parents and offering this freedom to our children, none of us will be able to run and live in full freedom without safety. It just will not happen. We will hear it and we will want it. We will long for it because it's how God created us. But there has to be this atmosphere of safety. And that is the main difference between authoritarian parenting and this gentle parenting concept, this gospel-centered parenting concept. And that when we create these places of safety and belonging, oh, like my favorite word on the planet. We have a sign in my house that says, "You belong here." This place where a child can come, just like Gary expresses. In my house, we say, is there anything you could do to love that would make me love you more? No. Is there anything you could do that would make me love you less? No. Will I love you forever and ever? Yes. So just really the same concept, it doesn't come back to what they do, it comes back to who they are. And we know who they are because we know who the Heavenly Father created them to be. We know He creates things in perfect beauty and fearlessly and wonderfully. And that is what we call out of them. And that concept, like you said, of failing forward, of every failure is not a failure, it's a learning period. So shifting that, when Cooper comes in the car and says, "I feel that in my belly and it feels so good to get it out," to say, "So what did we learn?" That is an awesome learning experience. Shifting the perspective to like, "I'm so glad that happened. Awesome. What do we have to learn from that?"
So good.
And we will call them epic learning experiences. When they were really bad, like maybe really embarrassing, my Magnolia will be like, "It was so embarrassing." I'll be like, "It's an epic learning experience. How awesome." Just really shifting the perspective from shame and why did I let that, the stories that we tell ourselves, these limiting beliefs, how could I have let that happen? Why would I do a thing like that? Those types of limiting beliefs are born in the place where Cooper and Waverly are right now. And why we have them is because of the lack of safety, the lack of freedom, because this just wasn't a thing when we were kids. So much compassion for our parents who did it the best they knew how and loved us so well.
Absolutely.
But just offering this space, and like you said, where the dichotomy sometimes comes in is that the father, the man, the provider, quite often in Christianity and in lots of realms, is supposed to be the powerful one. And in compassion, that's because he's supposed to be protecting his household. But shifting that lens with fathers, as Gary has, to that protection should look like safety, not like grit power of "you will do this the way I say, in my home," because that's not our Father. That's not our Heavenly Father. So I love the way that you presented that. And just knowing that, I always say 80%, 90%, sometimes 99% of parenting is how we show up in the space. Our kiddos are going to show up where they are developmentally, age-appropriate behavior, all of those pieces that it's so important to know. You were talking a little earlier about expectations, and that's a whole nother conversation as well as to what we should truly be expecting from our children. But how we show up, are we regulated? Are we grounded in truth? Are we grounded in the Father's love for us? So where you were in that place in children's ministry when your babies were little and you were going, "Actually, I literally don't have that to give right now."
Yeah.
So ensuring that we as parents are fully rooted, fully grounded in the Father's love for us, that's just the space we'll show up in. Will we make mistakes? My goodness, yes. I yelled yesterday. It happens sometimes. It really, and then it's how we act in that space at that point, modeling. I will say to my kids, "Oh my goodness, that was not a kind way to speak to you. That was not honoring. That was not respectful. I am so sorry." And just sitting in that space of, I'm so thankful for forgiveness.
Yeah.
So thankful for the safety and the love in this house. And speaking that out loud. So they know that, and then I say, "What a learning experience."
I love you.
Try to do these 6
Yes.
things at once or I'm going to blow.
And I think what's really like one of the questions on live right now was how can one relate all of this to God the Father? Whether you're a parent or not a parent, it's this knowing that the way we're speaking is us emulating what Jesus did here on earth and what God does for us every single day. And I love that this is being recorded during Holy Week, that we get to example just who Jesus was in all of the honoring ways that we can, how he treated his disciples, his friends, the people closest to him, is no different than how we would treat our children in some regard. It's like, would you yell out at your friend? Right? Would you reprimand them? Would you put them in timeout because they came to you after they told you they did something wrong? Like, there's, of course, not necessarily this like equality in age, but there's this equality in love to God, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what the backstory is. And so we can't judge our children based on our expectations or our experience or how we would respond to something. They're different people. Jesus literally responded to each of the disciples differently when they were being silly, when they were choosing the wrong thing. He didn't respond the exact same way. He responded in what they needed. And so that's been one of my biggest learned lessons as a parent is I can't parent Cooper the same way that I parent Waverly. They don't respond. They don't receive the same way. Our conversations are very different. The way we play together is very different. And yet I can still maintain that Jesus like, that fatherly like, and I say father with femininity, obviously motherly role in their life based on how God has loved me and God has forgiven me and God has shown up for me. And so I hope that speaks to your question, Kelly. And if you want to speak to it as well, Pam, just the modeling that we're doing as we learn who Jesus and God are to us every single day, even more.
Yeah. I think speaking to that, two pieces. One is that we are all children of God. We are all works in progress. As Tamra says, we are always becoming. And knowing that as we are those works in progress and he is loving us through that and in that way, and none of us are going to be perfection on this side of heaven, that having that expectation over our children, that's oppressive. That's too much. They will never meet that. And that will lead to that striving that we don't want. Striving is the opposite of freedom.